Hi, welcome back to another episode of The Human Side of AI, and I'm your host, Flora. Today's guest is Jess Pischel, and I really hope I'm saying your last name right, Jess. She is the founder of Human First AI Consulting based in Cleveland, Ohio. Jess came to AI through consulting, a corporate L&D career, and honestly, just being a mom of three who needed to work smarter. She now helps small to mid-sized businesses do something that sounds simple but is actually really hard, figuring out where AI fits before just jumping into it. Her philosophy is people, process, technology, in that order, and she has some of the most concrete client examples I've heard on the show yet, including a funeral home and a general contractor in California who needed a morning report he could actually listen to in the car. This one is practical, grounded, and really human, just like Jess. So let's get into it. There we go. All right, Jess, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday.
Yay, Friday. Where are you calling from?
I am in Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. I never left, went to college here, and our families are here. So we're in Cleveland. I'm Cleveland proud.
Cool. I love that. And it's kind of rare these days to see someone like in their space for, a while.
Yes. Yep. We're here.
So how did you find Club Jam?
So I found Club Jam through a SCORE webinar, actually. That was probably about 6 or 7 months ago when I was at my full-time job. I was a director of learning and development for a global biotech company, and I was wanting to figure out how to use AI in my role, practically to save time, to kind of organize my thoughts, to restructure some trainings, and I was kind of thinking about starting my own consulting business, because prior to that role I was in consulting for about 5.5 years.
Awesome.
And I loved consulting, but I was traveling. This was pre-COVID, so I was traveling like 2 or 3 days a week, sometimes more, never less. And then I had a few babies, and it was like I just can't travel that way anymore. So I ended up taking the full-time position with a former consulting client of mine that was acquired by a larger company. So that's how I landed in the learning and development arena. And then from there, I was kind of exploring, like, how do I get back into consulting? And AI just felt like the right time. My current business that I was working on, they weren't really going in that direction. So it was something that I really, wanted to learn more and explore more. And so I started my own company kind of behind the scenes and started educating myself in the arena. And that's how I landed on Jam with SCORE, and then just kept following, her and her messaging and her trainings, and just really appreciate the way that she breaks things down very, very simply, which is something that my clients can really benefit from.
I love that. And I love seeing people use what they're learning to serve their own clients. Like, yes, no one's
Yeah.
keeping here. Okay, I have a lot of questions for you. So tell us a little bit more about your current consulting agency and talk to us a little bit about who that serves and what it offers and kind of what a day-to-day looks like for that.
Yes. So a lot of my current clients are former consulting clients of mine, just through my network. So that's a good thing, because it shows that, they appreciate and trust my opinion and my guidance and my consulting. And so when I started my own business, I was kind of reaching out to them and just doing some initial discovery work, like, hey, what are some of the mundane tasks you wish you didn't have to do? Or what are some of those? Yeah. And just what are some of those pieces where, you wish were automated so that you can get back to what truly matters, which is serving your customers, going above and beyond for your customers. And I was in customer service and employee experience consulting before. So I wanted people to spend their time less in like data and spreadsheets and drafting an email or drafting a marketing campaign, and more time actually spending with the people.
Yeah.
So my clients right now are small to mid-sized companies. I didn't want to travel. Not that consulting these days requires you to be on the road, but I appreciate that level of relationship building that comes with face-to-face interactions. So I wanted to kind of bring that to Cleveland. I saw that there was like a missing gap kind of in between, small to mid-sized businesses knowing that they need to use AI, but just not really knowing where to start. They're overwhelmed. They can't afford, the big consulting firms, the McKinseys, the Deloittes, but they know they have to keep up with the times. And so that's the gap in which I try to support my clients is, what are some of the things that we can automate using AI? And then being able to help support them in implementation and change management. So I went through the ProSci change management certification a couple years ago, and that just really helped in consulting in general. And so I use a lot of those best practices to kind of bring people along in the AI adoption journey.
And for those who aren't familiar, like me, tell us like high level a couple of those practices that come to mind if you don't mind.
With change management or
Yeah.
with my consulting?
Well, let's start with the change management. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think AI is overwhelming for people. They are intimidated by it for various reasons, for privacy concerns, for trust in the platform or in the program or in the technology. People don't necessarily love change, and I think it's really helpful to bring them along on the journey with you. So I always like to include, some early adopters that are interested in the topic and really lean into those individuals to help support the messaging that we're going to be delivering. I find that in change management, you have to tell them again, and then tell them again and again and again, right? Like their day jobs, for the most part, aren't in the AI arena. Mine is, theirs isn't. So I just have to always remember that I have to really slow down and bring them along on the journey, and also sharing the what's in it for me. How is this going to help me in my role is another really important component of that.
How so?
So the one example that I'm working on right now is a funeral home. So death care industry is pretty slow to adopt to change. I mean, if you were to walk in a funeral home right now, you could probably picture exactly, what the location looks like what you feel when you walk in,
if you've been in one, you've been in them all.
Sure.
Okay.
Who works at funeral homes, right? They're mostly like second, third generation owners, and so that's not stereotyping. That's the industry that is. And so they're a little bit slow to adapt to changes. And but when they have a funeral service for a family, you come in and you meet with the funeral director, and you cover everything from the vitals on the death certificate to what type of casket are we purchasing, perhaps, or everything, all of the details, right? Even down to like, are we putting lipstick on grandma? Like, what type of flowers are we ordering? All of those things. And that meeting is done in about 90 minutes, sometimes more, if family's grieving and it takes a little bit longer, but that meeting is all pen and paper. And then the funeral directors have to take their notes and type it into a data, their data management tool, their case management tool, which can take, another hour. So I'm like, well, if we automate this, if we can record, transcribe, and put this information into the system that already exists, it will save them hours of manual data entry. So that's the what's in it for them. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your job easier. You're not going to miss things in the conversation with the family members because it's being recorded. So it's like helping you do your job, reducing errors, making your work faster, automating some things that you probably didn't want to do anyway. I don't really know anyone who loves data entry. And that allows them to have more time to go above and beyond with their families.
Well, and yeah, like I was thinking, I pictured them, okay, they've moved to a computer and put this information as they're talking, but now they can put the computer away and they can have this face-to-face human experience, which
Yeah.
like is really needed in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, that project particularly is slow to roll out because it's a crawl, walk, run approach. Like, you have to make sure you have the family's blessing before you record them. And you have to make sure that the funeral directors are comfortable delivering that information. And, so we had a script that really helps them speak to the why behind it, so the families aren't intimidated by the recording or anything like that. And then just making sure it works, right? We want to make sure that it captured the information correctly, that it really did eliminate some of the time and effort that they would have had to do, but keeping a human in the loop. So they always have the opportunity to edit the material that AI captured. They have the final set of eyes and edits. So that's important too, keeping the human in control.
Jess, you're helping automate the funeral industry. I mean, that's like, would you have ever thought about that a few years ago?
No, I mean, I didn't picture that to be my niche, but it's definitely really a rewarding,
Cool.
a rewarding industry to help serve, for sure.
Yeah. So what other, I mean, like one of the main reasons I love what I do is because I get to like be a small part of so many different businesses, right? And I feel like as a consultant, you're doing exactly that. So what other kind of industries and businesses are you a part of?
So I have the thing that I love about AI and the thing that I love about consulting is it's constantly changing. You constantly have to adapt to what your client needs. And that's energizing and exciting for me. And I am a continuous learner, so I love being challenged by that.
Cool.
So it's fun for me to kind of shift gears and work in many different industries because every industry can benefit from AI. But another one that I'm working on right now, which is pretty fun, is a general contractor in the construction industry. So he has
Another industry that doesn't typically stay up to times of technology.
Sure, yeah. And so he reached out and just wanted a simple way to gather basically a morning report. He is in the state of California traffic, driving from job to job. He may have 5 to 10 different job sites that he has to be on that day. So he spends a lot of time commuting in his car and doesn't have time, and it's not safe to be, on your phone checking the status of these jobs. How close are they to meeting, to hitting the deadline, or where are they at on budget, or, how many team members showed up to work that day, or whatever the case may be. He needed like a report to answer all of those questions. And so what we did was create a tool for him that basically scrapes all of the platforms that he currently uses and synthesizes that and summarizes that into one report. So he just has one place to look as his source of truth. And so the next phase of that is now making sure that he can call that AI agent, in between jobs and ask more specific questions. So that's kind of the phase 2.
Cool.
Yeah, so you can get kind of more details on some of the projects. And so again, AI can be implemented in really any business and any industry, and it really should be. So that makes it fun too. So
Well, and I mean, I love this. You're touching on these like very human-centered experiences. So one of the questions I sent over was, and sometimes I send questions over and we don't even cover them, but I want to cover this one. What does human-centered mean to you when it comes to AI, and where do you see a lot of businesses getting it wrong right now?
So human-centered to me really means that the technology works for the people and not the other way around. So many times, you see a company being sold a product or a tool, but it's not actually solving the true problem that exists in the first place. So when you think about like people, process, technology, it has to be in that order. Most businesses tend to get lost along the way and mix those up. So I think that that's really important to always keep a human in the loop, and just make sure that they're part of the journey. You know, starting with, and this, a lot of my clients think they need AI, and maybe they do eventually, but a lot of them just don't have the right business processes in place, or they're clumsy in those processes, or they weren't standardized, or things changed along the way and we never updated those policies. So just identifying and streamlining the workflows first, and then implementing AI of how it can automate. So a lot of my clients right now start as almost like business management consulting. Like, where are the areas of opportunity? What goes wrong? What could we fix? Because as you know, in AI, it's garbage in, garbage out. You can't have messy processes and expect AI to fix them and deliver. So taking a step back, which some people don't really want to hear, and that's okay, because then they're probably not the best client for me anyway. But, if your team believes AI is coming for their job, they're not going to help you implement it. That's going to be a part of their resistance. So, there has to be someone in leadership that says, hey, come on along. We're on this journey together, and making sure that the human is helping build and support those processes. And then AI could be the answer, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not right now, but just leading them on their journey.
You just said two really powerful things that I don't want to just pass over. You said, people, process, technology, in that order.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I don't want to butcher this. You also said just making the technology work for the people, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an obvious statement, but I think something that we all kind of get lost in.
Absolutely. And I think being human-centered means that your team feels like AI made their work better. It made their lives easier, not that AI made them feel replaceable. And
Yeah,
I think AI,
right?
yeah, and I think, everyone is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to replace some of the entry-level positions? Yes, I think that is in the future. I don't know how close that future is, but those people are either going to have opportunities to have a more creative position that AI can't necessarily do. And there's always going to have to be someone managing the AI tool or process as well. So I think it's just going to evolve the way that, we look at job descriptions and roles and responsibilities.
I love that. And I love listening to people tell their story and kind of finding that aha moment on why their journey makes perfect sense just for them, right? And you touched on your background in consulting, and you touched on your background and just being very local to your community and this face to face. And then I was kind of surprised to hear you mention, your client in California. So how much right now are you doing face to face, virtual, and what does that look like for you?
I would say mostly all of my work is virtual, but that's mostly because most of my clients had already worked with me before. So I don't really need that in-person discovery strategy session because I know their businesses so well.
Yeah.
I do appreciate doing that level of engagement in person for new clients, because I just think it helps really build and establish a strong relationship, and mutual partnership. And you asked the question about, being local. One of the, I guess, revenue streams that I have was kind of, I fell into that accidentally with the funeral home example. They're local, and I knew that was going to take, a decent amount of time to get them on board with the introduction of the tool. And so I created a course for them that just gave them the basics. Like, this is the fundamentals that you need. This is the way that it gets implemented in culture. Kept it very high level, very simple, very easy to follow, a lot of micro learnings, a lot of one-pagers, because I knew that I wasn't just going to be able to launch this tool and it be accepted. So I'm like, let's just like slowly start introducing what exactly it is. And again, what's in it for you, and how do we implement this as part of our culture, like part of who we are as an organization. And so that course that I created is generic enough that anyone can benefit from it regardless of the industry that you're in. If you need like an AI basics 101. But that course was approved by the state of Ohio. And the state of Ohio has this program called Ohio TechCred. And that means that anyone in the state of Ohio that has a non-residential business address and W-2 employees can take this course of mine and get reimbursed 100% by the government.
Cool.
I know it sounds too good to be true, but it's really a good way for the state of Ohio to help people invest in their people and upskilling them in this arena on their dime. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so it's worked out really nicely because when I'm working with a company, I can point them to this course that they can take to upskill themselves. So we're all starting with a strong foundation of language and terminology, and I'm not talking above them or below them. Like, we're all starting from the same platform. So that helps bring people up to speed. And that program is only available in the state of Ohio. Like I said, you have to have a non-residential business address in Ohio, but it's a really great program that the state funds that that people can take advantage of. And you already have to train your employees. You might as well get it paid for by the government. Yeah.
And I love a win-win-win-win. Like,
sure.
I love it. It's great for the state. It's great for the company owners. It's great for you. Like, I love this. And also what a wonderful like top of funnel offering that you're able to, put out and then bring people in. So when you do work with, I know you said a lot of your clients are existing clients. When you do work with a new client, what does it look like? Like, kind of what does that like intake process look like for you?
So I have a discovery kind of pre-work strategy session where we just talk through, and really it's me asking a lot of questions to understand what the root cause of the problems are or where the areas of opportunity for process improvement lie. So that call can be anywhere from, 30 to 60 minutes, but we go through, it on a detailed level. I break it down into a couple different areas. I break it down into like sales, marketing, operations, and admin. And then I look at each of those 4 categories and say, I don't ask these questions directly, but what I'm thinking about on my end is how do we either make money, save time in any of those areas? So I kind of segment it for them, and those are my goals in each of those pieces. And then we work backwards to, how are we gonna get there?
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah. So where do you see the biggest opportunity for entrepreneurs right now when it comes to AI strategy?
I think the biggest opportunity is just to start simple, start boring. It should be boring almost on purpose by default. I know that's not really what anyone wants to hear, but everyone comes in wanting to build the AI chatbot or to launch the agent. And while those things can work, and they do work for a lot of organizations, that's not typically where it starts. So I think finding some of those repetitive, low stakes areas of opportunity that are genuinely painful for the person doing it, like both examples that I shared a few moments ago, and then figuring out from there, how do we solve for those, and what tools or what's the workflow that's going to solve for those, so we have to touch it less and we can just be, the oversight. So I think just, you're not don't try to convince your team that AI is like this magic wand or, magic tool, but really make it easy and tangible and simple. And another thing is AI needs to be part of the conversation all the time. It needs to be and have, a seat at the table. It needs to be on the agenda. And for small to mid-sized businesses, I think it's a really, really good idea to have almost like some internal roundtables. I know it sounds like another meeting, but sharing best practices of what you tried and what's worked and what didn't work. and talking through those together as a team and like learning and growing. But it has to explicitly have a space. Otherwise, it gets lost like any other initiative. And this is one that just isn't going away. So it has to be part of the conversation all the time. And it's not up to just one person. It's not up to, just the operations manager or just the IT department. It's up to everyone to figure out how they can use it in their role, in their job description, in their department. And so I just think opening up that conversation is really, really important.
I love that. And Jess, I know we're over, and I apologize. We got to kind of dig into some human stuff before we start push record. But I just have two more questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Something that I find very interesting is this double-edged sword of offering your services and then also running your business. And they're kind of two different worlds often. You're doing this service, you're offering this service or this product, and then you're also running your business, right? So you've shared a good amount today on what it's like to, work with your clients and to offer that. What is it like using AI to run your business?
So I use Claude for, almost everything I do. I'm a one-man show right now. I have some partners that I work with and outsource some work to, but essentially it's me. And so it's really my thought partner. If I have an idea or a challenge, I'll often use Claude to help me come to a solution, or at least help me think creatively about a recommendation. So I use it as a thought partner, and I'm starting to use it to automate more of my tasks, scan my inbox, tell me what's a priority, respond to emails. So I'm using it in that way. I think easy, low-hanging fruit way that everyone can use it is to, use it from a lens of marketing. It used to take, I don't know, hour to write an article to post on LinkedIn. And now I can just kind of give Claude my takeaways and help it in my voice draft something. And it's never perfect. I always have to adjust it slightly. But I think that's just one way that you can use it. And now I use Claude for that, but then I take it back to ChatGPT, and I use that for like the infographic that I post with my, my post. So I think those are a couple ways that I use it, but I'm always looking for other opportunities to implement it in my daily work. And I think that's why Jam's community is so cool, because everyone is sharing what works for them, and it's just an awesome way. Everyone in that community wants everyone else to succeed. So that's a really fun group to be a part of.
Yay, I love that. Okay, and this actually brings me to my last question. So you mentioned your LinkedIn. Is that the best way to for people to reach out to you? Like, if someone's listening to this and they're really resonating with your style and your methodology, what are questions that they could ask themselves to make sure that this is a right fit to reach out to you, and what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have a website. I'm on LinkedIn, but if you go to my website, there's a page for resources. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of that page, maybe it should be on the top, but there's a human first AI agent, basically, that's going to ask you a series of questions and give you some low-hanging fruit, best practices, quick wins, and then it'll prompt you eventually to book a call with me and we can explore more. So I think if you're, you don't really know where to start, you got to get there though. That's a good way to do is to use my AI advisor, which is on my website. So humanfirstaiconsulting.com, and then just go to the resources page, and there's some some quick micro learning videos that are also available via my TechCred course. But those are some areas where it's just quick wins in AI or how to get started, and with some one pagers as well. So I always recommend people start there, and if that feels right, and you want to open up the conversation to tangible implementation, then we can have a call and talk through that.
I love that. I love that. And I just keep thinking, like you're a mom of three and a business owner, and like, how would it even be possible to do all of this and still have your sanity without AI? It's
Oh, I know. I mean, when I was starting my business and, applying for my LLC and, doing all of the paperwork, I mean, that without AI would have, in alone, taken me significantly longer than it did. Just having that tool to be able to guide you isn't something that people had years ago when they were starting their own business. So, oh my gosh, I mean, I give anyone who started their business 5 to 10 years ago like so much credit because they didn't have this tool to help them through it. But yeah, it certainly, moved the needle faster for me, definitely.
awesome. Jess, thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing so much about, who you are as a business owner and as a human. And I'm really glad to, be a part of this community with you and get to see, your journey throughout this. So just thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Love this community. Happy to be here and love the connections that I've made in this environment that Jam has created. So it's been awesome.
Very cool. And for those who aren't watching this, they're just listening. Jess is wearing a sweatshirt that says grateful. And I just feel like that sums up a lot of this conversation. So very grateful to have you here and grateful to, hear the work you're doing. So thank you again, Jess. Happy Friday. And we'll talk very soon.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.